Hello and welcome to the Understanding Narcissists YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me. This episode is going to be kind of a continuation of a series on enablers and the psychology and, this sounds lofty, but behavioral dynamics of enablers and how they fit into the scheme of things. Now, the reason it's a series is because it is fiendishly complicated. It is very complicated because narcissists, once you lay out the groundwork, are pretty simple. They can be nuanced, they can be sophisticated, they can be tricky and clever and whatnot, but they've got a few directives that you can kind of, once you see it all for what it is and kind of flesh it out, like I've tried to do, things come together, they're consistent, and you can readily track their behavior. With enablers, it's not that way at all, because enablers are not narcissists. They are people. It's not that they can't have their own problems, but really prime enablers, the perfect people to support narcissists, are going to be people who are, they have all kinds of problems, but they're not necessarily disordered. And they're not necessarily the people with the most problems. Their problems might be that they think they have all these things wrong with them, and that's kind of their problem. Call it whatever you want, low self-esteem, self-worth. I think that's a different path as to what's really going on with enablers and all their varying problems. But what unites them is this desire to make somebody else happy and validate them. And other than that, they're much more complicated and they're much more unique because they're not terribly crippled and dysfunctional human beings that I can define pretty easily. It's not really hard to describe narcissists and have other people understand it, especially if they've experienced it. If they've never experienced it, there's the people who can nod their head, but they're like, I really don't know what you were talking about. I don't know what this is like. But if you've experienced it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Even so, they're a relatively simple matter when compared to the enabling body, the complex, the whole thing surrounding the illusion, the net of people, the network of people supporting the illusion, inadvertently, unknowingly. That's because, by and large, they're not going to be terribly dysfunctional people. There can be some exceptions to that, and I'll point those out later on, but in general, I'm just going to stick with that description. So, with all of that said, describing the enablers surrounding the narcissist is not terribly difficult. It's much harder than describing the narcissist like I've been doing. But it isn't so hard in and of itself because there aren't that many people, there aren't that many players. What happens is that it evolves in time. It changes depending on the stage of the relationship the enabler is in with a narcissist. And also what complicates it is that enablers often work together or have a relationship with each other with respect to the narcissist that further complicates the situation and the result. And so that's where you see a lot of the more complicated dynamics of it, so to speak. Let me give you an example. This doesn't just exist with narcissists. This can be with all other abusive types, but with narcissists, it's definitely always there. And that is how they control enablers using other enablers. That's kind of really the controlling stock that they hold on to. That enablers keep other enablers in line. Because, as I've said before, the narcissist would prefer to have all the good things about the illusion and all the praise showered onto them, unquestioningly and assumed that they're just wonderful people. And then everybody else has to deal with all the problems. And that's the real kind of ingenuity of the illusion, is that it makes the narcissist look great and the rest of the people look bad. And like they're slinging mud at each other and they're all fighting and clawing at each other's faces and whatnot. and keeping it chaotic. And then all the assumptions, all the stuff about who's a good person remains with the narcissist. Now that statement really needs further elaboration to make sense and for me to prove it, and I will over time. But it's not really necessary for me to go into that in this video. But just for me to point out that the way they control the group of people around them, say a family, is to vest a lot of conflict onto individual members between each other, and to generate that conflict and those problems, so that the real problems are never identified, so that the real issues can never be solved. Like I said in my previous video on functional behavior, they can't allow the functional behavior to rise up. Or even take a synonym, the truth, for instance. They can't let it all come out because then it threatens their position, their well-being as they see it. So the stage of relationship that an enabler is in with a narcissist is also complicates the situation further, because some enablers may sit in a certain stage for a long time in total disbelief about the narcissist being abusive, while another one might be further along and realize there's something wrong. And so the narcissist has to find a way, as I said, often an ingenious way, to have them combat each other. The best thing you can do is to have enablers have a stake in the illusion so that they fight each other and defend the illusion without realizing it, so the narcissist doesn't have to. That's the highest form of manipulation. It's probably most sophisticated that I can tell, is when not only is it being defended without people even acknowledging that there is an illusion, but it's being defended by the people who aren't creating the illusion and actually don't have the greatest interest in it. The illusion is destroying everybody. It's destroying the narcissist too, but the narcissist can get along with it, and they can only get along with it. It's really the opposite with the enablers. The enablers can't get along or do anything if the illusion is present, because the illusion requires them to be total screw-ups. And then all the while, they can't acknowledge that, and they're defending it because they're so scared that everything will fall apart, everything will crumble. And really, they're scared about what the narcissist is going to do if the illusion is threatened. And so they have to, inadvertently, support it. And so getting all that, I hope to prove that further and really drive that home in later videos. But to get this kind of mini-series rolling on this channel, this whole enabling complex, I guess that's the only thing I can think of to call it. Because it's very complicated. And so hopefully over time it'll be made clearer to you, and especially intuitively if you've experienced it and been a part of it, then it's something that you start to realize. But it's really definitely one of those things that, like when you first encounter narcissism, it's unbelievable. It simply can't be the case, because theoretically it sounds absurd. It sounds absurd to me. I would be willing to say, oh, I'm skeptical of it. Maybe not everything is true, but the problem is I've had it, one, proven to me by narcissists too many times when they try to defend it, and when it's threatened, they flip out. And two, it's been thrown in my face too many times where I start to go along and think, yeah, none of this can be true, and then it all blows up and it's all shown to be true, and it's absurd. But remember, the absurdity is not so much in the human behavior that we all exhibit, that we all have, the enablers, but, or the rest of the people who aren't narcissists in the controlling environment, whatever. It's the absurdities in the narcissist. It's in that conflict. It's in all that conflicting stuff. And yes, they're people, but they're very disordered. And so it's important to give credit where credit is due. And the really insane looking stuff that happens when the illusion is threatened, and what the enablers do to protect it, that's not so insane in itself. They're just scared. The narcissist is the one who is emanating and generating this insanity. That is what is within them that they're always keeping bottled up all the time. So that's a really important thing to understand. And I just want to say the last point I want to make is that the time aspect of it is important, because these relationships don't exist at one point in time. They're evolving and changing in their dynamic. And time is a dimension of that. Time is always rolling along, and so that is imposing a lot of threats to the illusion, because the narcissist has to maintain this facade, this whole controlling complex, and they have to use the enablers to do it, and they have to fool them sort of in this little mini cult or whatever it is that people don't even think of as a cult. And all the beliefs, all the assumptions, all the things that go into the illusion, all to maintain all that stuff within the enablers so the enablers can keep it running, requires a lot of work. And I call it negative work because it doesn't do any good. It's really just compounding this terrible problem until it blows up. Because really, I have to say more often than not, at some point the illusion just blows up. It's ultimately a self-destructing construct, whatever it is. And that is the really important thing to understand as an end result, and an inevitability. But between when it starts, so to speak, when the narcissist is instilling that in people to get the illusion rolling and to control that group and or say the family unit, to when it does blow up, all kinds of stuff is happening to keep it going. And it is. It's very sophisticated, sort of. It's kind of an illusion in itself that it looks like it's so much greater than it really is, just like them. But there's a lot of nuanced stuff that they pull, and it tricks you for a while. Once you start listening and keeping your ear to the ground and watching for this stuff, and that's what I'm hoping to help you with. Once you start developing an eye for it, then they're pretty much beaten. They don't know it yet, but the battle's pretty much won, because won for you and lost for them, because they can't repurpose everything they do. They are locked into that behavior. They can try to sidestep it. They can try to fool you in different ways, little twists here and there, but they're still narcissists. They're going to keep acting like narcissists, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. And so they've already lost, but they haven't realized it. I hope you like this video. Like it if you do. Share it with somebody you think might benefit from it. Comment in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.